and hospital in Buffalo, New York. I have two main roles here. I have an operations hat and a web hat. My operations hat kind of oversees the gift processing team, making sure all those processes are in place. We enter about 130,000 gifts into Raiser's Edge each year. Those are both online and offline gifts. And my web hat, or my web role, is overseeing and implementing all of our online fundraising and online websites. We have about 11 websites. We have a bunch of donation forms and 10 unique team raisers per year. Roswell Park is, as I said, our cancer center in Buffalo, New York. It's similar to, say, like a Sloan Kettering or an MD Anderson, just smaller and not as well known, but we were one of the first in the nation. A quick overview of the foundation: that all our money is raised goes to Roswell Park. We have a budget about $20 million in revenue a year that we try to reach. About $5 million of that is online. We do have a 4-star Charity Navigator rating, mostly to really keeping our expenses to 25% or lower. I have a staff of about 45 employees. So we're in that mid-range nonprofit world, I would say. We been a Blackbaud client for about 20 years when they first got Raiser's Edge. I have only been at Roswell for 5 years. When I started, back then, we were in Net Community and Sphere for all of our online initiatives. And then a little over 2 years ago, we migrated to Luminate and TeamRaiser, and that is when we started working with Cathexis.
Great. So she's going to cover a lot of great topics today that are from real world, the types of challenges that they had and how they overcame them. So everything from conditional emails for registration autoresponders. So once someone registers for the TeamRaiser, conditionalizing the actual message and based on specific items. Then we'll also cover scheduled events and emails, promoting self-donations during registration, donor incentives, and then some more general tips. And then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. But again, feel free to chat any questions. We have everybody else muted at the moment, but feel free to chat any questions you have along the way in the chat window at the top. All right.
Mark, do you still see my screen?
I can. It did say
Okay.
Have a message saying that you were having some technical issues. Are you able to advance the slide?
I'll just ignore that as long as you can still see my screen. Sorry.
Yeah, I saw that. Can you advance the slide now?
Yep. And you see that conditional emails for registration?
Actually, not yet. No. Gotta love webinars, right?
Yes.
What I can do is get to that slide and share my screen instead.
Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know what's...
No, it happens. Hold on a moment, everybody. Let me take over screen share. And Karen, can you see my screen now?
I can. We can see now your screen. Okay.
Look at that. The magic. All right, so the first topic is the conditional emails for registration autoresponders. And
Great.
You're off.
Okay. So our challenge, our RIDE event, we have the RIDE, it's called the RIDE for Roswell. It is our largest peer-to-peer event and has over 7,000 participants, and we raise close to $5 million. The challenge, though, is we have 13 different participant types, or what we call routes, for our riders to select from. And 13 different routes also creates 13 different bits of information sometimes for these different routes. We have for example, we have a 100-mile route. We have to make sure those people are pre-qualified. We have a route that goes into Canada, and we have to make sure those people know that they're going to have to provide a passport, things along those lines. We have different fundraising commitments for different routes. So instead of sending information to riders at different times and just one-off emails here and there, we really wanted to have one registration autoresponder that would give all this information possible so that we could really make it work. And so our solution was, on the next slide, is all about the S tags. We've all heard about S tags at every event at BBCon or anything you've gone to, but S tags really saved us here. We have a registration, our autoresponder for registration is full of S tags to make detailed information specific for them. Now, I am definitely not an S tag expert, but that's where Cathexis came in for me, so it's been awesome. They make sure that all the S tags were working, but then after they did that 2 years ago, now I'm able to really kind of just copy it for different year-to-year events, but also event-to-event. So, for example, this email, and again, this is one autoresponder, but this email has about 6 or 7 different S tags in it, and again, it has a message for the 100-mile riders. It has a message for the Canada riders. It has a message for the youth riders or their parents, you know, saying that they only have to raise $50. Virtual riders get a special message trying to keep them engaged and also raise money. And we don't want to forget about the fundraising aspect. We also have a S tag in there for our self-donors, thanking them, the self-donors that donated during registration, thanking them for their donation, or if they didn't, telling them to, hey, why don't you kickstart your fundraising by making a donation today. So this really, really helps us a lot. I will say, though, make sure that when you're setting up S tags in your autoresponders to go through a lot of testing. Because of all that code and all those little, you know, insert brackets and everything like that, you have to make sure everything is working. What I do is I set up a testing spreadsheet for my coworkers. I'm lucky that I have a bunch of coworkers that I assign to go through a bunch of testing. Everybody has a different role. This one has to register for Canada. This one has to pretend they're youth, etc. And then they forward me all of their autoresponders. And sometimes we have to go back and forth and register again as new people. But it really, you have to test. That's my one advice on that. But once those S tags are set up, and once your S tags are working, it is golden, and it really, really, really helps us tremendously. Our result is basically, you can see on the next page, is really a lot of reduced emails and phone calls to the staff. It's also personalized information. You know, it's very much, when somebody gets a personalized or autoresponder or an email from an organization that says, oh, yeah, I am registered for Canada, and this is what I have to do, it really makes all the difference for them. They can tell that we're working smart, that we know who we're talking to. And it really, the customer service team is just really thankful for this, because otherwise they're just getting all these questions after the fact. So this is an S tags are the way to go. They're hard to learn and they're hard to figure out, but if you can get it working with a partner such as Cathexis, then they really help tremendously.
Yeah, and we love clients like Karen and her team, because they get it. They want to use the true benefits you get with a tool like TeamRaiser and Illuminate. So this is a great use case and that's one of the reasons I wanted to make this a webinar, because this is a great use case for the conditionalized autoresponders being in the registration, but it can really be any email inside of Illuminate or TeamRaiser. It doesn't have to be just in registration autoresponders, but it's just such a huge time saver, and it really allows you to really target in and segment your audience and send just one email, but have it be very unique depending on how they're interacting with you or how they're not interacting with you. And I think that's a great use case. So really powerful stuff, and I'd love to see more clients using this.
I will say, Mark, that we do use S tags in some of our just regular emails, not, so we don't use it as detailed as that autoresponder, but I'm, learning more and more about S tag grouping. So these people are registered, so they don't get the register button, where these people are not registered, they get the register button. So.
Yep, perfect. Oh, and there was look at you go. Yeah, and there was a question in the chat about who specifically worked on this. The S-tags can get a bit technical, but there is good documentation out there in the Blackbaud community. If you can't locate it, feel free to drop me a note, and we can send you a link to the latest version of it. And like Karen said, sometimes the brackets, once you start nesting, because you can nest conditionals inside of conditionals inside of conditionals, like raised over $0 but less than 0 to 100, and then within there nest something else but hasn't updated their personal page, and that can quickly, okay, do I put a bracket there or don't I? And it can be cumbersome or confusing, complex as you go, but nothing that you can't work through with a little testing and some just experience in doing it. So definitely test whenever you're doing these type of things, but you don't have to be a techie to make it work.
Agreed.
All right, next up we're going to talk about scheduled event emails.
Great.
There we go.
Okay, so the challenge we had in this scenario is we have 6 DIY peer-to-peer events. We have, athletics, birthdays, memorials, and then we also have shaving your head, or we call it Bald for Bucks. And so if, like all DIY TeamRaisers or peer-to-peer events, each participant signs up and has their own unique event date over the course of a year. And we really wanted to communicate these to these participants 8 weeks out, 4 weeks out, 2 weeks out, 1, and then even 2 weeks after their event. But they all had different event dates. So how are we going to communicate to all these different people? And then, but they all have different dates. And we wanted to do it automatically. We didn't want a staff member going through this, all our participants every week and seeing, okay, who's 8 weeks out, who's 4 weeks out, et cetera. So that was really our challenge. When we were in Sphere for our DIYs, we had figured out how to send a monthly email like, for anybody who has an event in March, but if somebody had an event on March 2nd, they'd get it the day before. If they had an event on March 30th, they would get it 30 days before. So it wasn't ideal. So we really wanted to figure out how can we communicate and do it automatically by their event date. So the solution was, if you go to the next page, Mark, is setting up a new additional information field. And we put that in their constituent profile that we set up through the database configuration. This additional information field, well, we had 2 of them. We had one for Bald, and then we had one for our Team Roswell. So we had 6 DIY events, but just 2 categories. And then by putting this event date additional information field on their profile, we are able to use that to create some groups and to create queries. You can advance one page. Right. So right there on that screen, you'll see there's the query section, which talks about looking for events 26 to 32 days prior to today. Today being whenever you run the query, or in our world, the email. So again, with Cathexis guidance, we created queries looking for numbers of weeks or days from an event, and we would rebuild these periodically, and then these queries created groups from these queries. So at the top part of the screen where you see the shorter Team Roswell Athletic event date 2 weeks out, event date 4 weeks out, those were our groups. So then we set up the emails to send to these specific groups. We send them once a week, and then every time it sends, it rebuilds the groups. It was very, I don't know if I'll say confusing, but we had to get our heads wrapped around it. But once we did, it makes sense, and it works like a charm. If you see on the next slide, we have examples of 2 emails. The first one on the far right is our 4 weeks away. So it says right in there, just 1 month until your event, and talks about fundraising in 4 easy steps. And then the next one, 2 weeks away, you are just 2 weeks away from your Team Roswell Challenge, and then there's a graphic on how to raise $200 in 1 week. So these were all set up, and so then every week, no matter when your event is, you're going to get an email sent to you based on how far away your event is. So it really was a huge step for us and a huge result in terms of people were engaged. Everything we sent them was focused on fundraising, and it was done automatically. It was a huge win. There were just multiple touch points that we would not have been able to do with our staff. And we saw a 36% open rate on average for all of these emails. So we thought it was a huge win for us. And if you see on the next page, I think there's all we do is set it and forget it. It's like a lot of work in the beginning once you get it set up, but set it and forget it is great for us, and it keeps everybody engaged with the focus on fundraising.
And again, I think that's another great example. And, as Karen said, it can be a bit overwhelming when you first get in there, but, your Blackbaud customer service folks can assist with that. Obviously, we are in the business of helping with that. And then once you learn how to fish, you can definitely run with it. We've had clients that we've worked with. We're coming up on our 10th year anniversary. We have clients that we've implemented in the first couple of years, and we taught them how to do this, and they come back to us still once in a while with some new feature or trying to do something unique. But, we taught them how to do this stuff years ago, and end up co-presenting in things like this down the road because they get it, they learn it, and they're able to run with it. And very powerful stuff, all at your fingertips, but don't feel like you have to boil the ocean or don't think you have to do it on your own. There's folks like us and your Blackbaud customer service reps out there to help you with that. So moving along now into promoting self-donation during registration flow.
Great. So challenge, again, this is going back to our Ride for Roswell event. We have passionate riders. We are very, very lucky in that we have a good retention rate, and we have very passionate people that participate in the event. But we noticed that not all of them are donating at time of registration. And last year, our average was 22% of people that donated during registration. And knowing how passionate these people are, we wanted to set a goal of 30%. So how do we entice people to donate during times of registration? So our solution was to make it more prominent in the registration form. So down there on the screen, you can basically, next to that graphic, you can see that we've turned on the donation levels. This is something we had never done before, never really experimented with, but it was pretty super easy. So if you, I'm not sure if this, go ahead and go to the next slide, Mark. Yes, in step 2 of your TeamRaiser is basically number 4, you check off number 4, yes, display the additional gift field on the participant form, and number 5, add the levels that you want. Now we started, with the bottom being 30, and we chose 30 as our lowest denominator because they have a registration fee of $20. So we thought, oh great, they'll do $20 registration fee, $30 donation. Hopefully we'll get a lot of people at that level, so they're just paying a $50 charge. What ended up actually happening so far is that we're actually averaging $80 for self-donation, so 80 plus the $20 is their $100 fee. So that was a big surprise for us, and 80 is not even listed there. So it's just interesting that our average is even higher than we thought. And then also on this slide, and you can see we added some copy for the personal donation. So it says your registration fee covers the cost of the event, but please consider supporting our mission. And then you get a fundraising goal. And then we also talk to them about how we're going to give them an incentive by sending them a wristband. So again, it created a lot of focus in that area. We thought this copy might be a bit long, but at the same time, we wanted to make sure they understood what we were doing. And if you see then too, if you scroll on to the next, we also added what's really Cathexis helped us with is the image in this area. So that is not something you can just do easily from the TeamRaiser setup. So they coded this somehow for me, and I was able to add an image there that really, again, calls attention to the self-donor area within the registration. And this is on the same page as the 13 different registration route options that they have to pick from.
Yeah, so, as you can see in those first couple of screenshots, the adding the donation levels and the text is very straightforward. It's click and configure, enter the amounts, and you're good to go. When it came to the image to help kind of pop it out a little bit, we had to get our developers involved to code that a bit to be able to have it styled so that that image appeared in the right place and also took responsive layouts in mind. So, some of this is kind of open the box and you can configure it yourself, but that one case it did take a little bit more of getting into the code to make it work.
With the solution, we're still steadily at 36% in self-donors. We opened in January, almost the beginning of January, so we're closing in on 2.5 months open rate, and it's been a steady 36% in self-donors, and as I mentioned, the $80 average donation. So this is really a win for us. We're really happy with where we are right now. People are excited about these wristbands. They're calling us, even if they missed it because their friend got one and they didn't get one, and if they've made a donation even to their page, we're still sending them out, but we're not counting them in the self-donors. But we're really, really happy with how this is turning out, and now, of course, my fundraising team wants to do this on all our TeamRaisers. So
that's great. All right, moving on to donor incentives.
Yes. So this one, we have an event called Bald for Bucks, and this is, again, one of our DIY events, and it's where people sign up to go bald or they cut their hair or just do a crazy hairstyle. It's very much geared towards schools K through 12, but all ages and genders participate. And we wanted to somehow, though, increase donations, specifically in this 1 month of February, which is kind of like what's going on in February. It's a down month, but we wanted to increase donations, and we also have a relationship with our local NHL team, the Buffalo Sabres. So how do we work that in together, and how do we incentivize the donors? So what we did, and just going back to the challenge, is that we also needed to collect T-shirt size. If we're going to incentivize the donors with a T-shirt, with the balls and the Sabres, which was kind of the promotion, we had to collect the T-shirt size. And that was really a challenge for us. Okay, here's this great idea. We have the Sabres involvement. We're going to give them a T-shirt if you do $50, but how do we get their T-shirt size? When we first started this like 2 years ago, we were still in Sphere. We had no way to update the donation form, and we had no way to get their T-shirt size when they made a donation. So our interns would call every donor to get the T-shirt size for the $50 donor. So that was a challenge for us that we wanted to correct. So the solution, though, was updating the donation form using the e-commerce tool and premium selector. So we were able to, on this page, we added an HTML caption above the donation form for during that month, so they could read right there, donate 50 more in the month of February to receive the T-shirt. And then you also on there was the premium selector in that donation form, which you can't see on this screenshot, but if they selected 50 or more, then they were also given the option to select their T-shirt size. So that was all, again, just adding an HTML capture in the donation form and then adding the premium selector. Here's a couple screenshots from the e-commerce section. So you basically create a product, Buffalo Sabres T-shirt, and then within that product, like I think this was step 16, you assign the donation form levels to that product. So there's definitely some steps that go back and forth, So like on the next page, you're back on the donation form, and that is showing you, again, how you would set up the premium selector. I remember, I was working with my account rep from Cathexis, and she was kind of guiding me, and it definitely, they just needed to guide me, and I was like, okay, the tools are all here. I was at the knowledge base. I was figuring things out, and it really was, again, they taught me how to fish, exactly, just like Mark had said earlier, and it was really easy to do. What I did do is set up a test donation form. So I did everything on a test donation form, a test ballot form, so I could go through all the steps. We could see what the screen looked like. We could, take care of all our notes and figure things out. And then when I was able to do it on that February 1st, I just had to kind of repeat my steps again, but it was pretty simple. We also created interest categories, so anybody who did make a donation of $50 and more, we were able to create an interest category. We did that so we could email them for future promotions and thank them. And then in our autoresponder for donations, we would add copy like, thanks for donating the $50. Your T-shirt will come in 2 to 3 weeks. Thank you for supporting the initiative. We also used TeamRaiser tools to help promote this to the actual people going balls, so they would increase their fundraising. We added it to their news feed. So like, hey, don't forget, here's a picture of a shirt. Your donors could get this, but we wanted the participants to also send that out. We also added a suggested message in their TeamRaiser Participant Center for the month of February. So little things within TeamRaiser that we could also do to make sure that our participants knew about this campaign as well as the donors. And we did great. Again, our first year in Sphere, compared to our first year in Sphere, we doubled our donations between Sphere and going to TeamRaiser, and created staff efficiency because we were able to collect the T-shirts. And then we also gave their participants the tools to help them exceed their goals. This year, last year, again, we did double. This year, we increased again. In 2016, we raised $80,000 for the month of February. This year, we raised over $122,000. And what's even more surprising about that is the savers are doing incredibly bad, and people still wanted those T-shirts. So it was really, really good news for us. We thought for sure that nobody was going to care, but
since they're having a bad season, it didn't correlate, huh?
Yeah, the tickets are so cheap right now that we thought maybe they had more money to spend on the T-shirts. So.
There was a question in chat. Any more info on publishing to event news feeds? Where does that show up within the Participant Center? Have you gotten into that?
That's if you're in your Luminate and under TeamRaiser, so fundraising TeamRaisers, there's a section called Newsfeed, and it's not. You would think it would be within your specific TeamRaiser, but it's not. There's a whole other tab that's called Newsfeed. And then within Newsfeed, there's event-specific news feeds. And you go in there, you set them up. My event, I don't even touch those. My fundraising team and the event team takes care of them all on their own. They're super simple for people to implement. You can do timed ones. You can do it to just team captains. We use news feeds a lot for team captains. Those are great. So you can remind your team captains to do whatever.
Yep, and if you have any problems locating that, definitely don't hesitate to reach out. As you can see, hopefully you already know or are seeing, if you're considering TeamRaiser, it is a very robust tool that's been supporting, thousands of different nonprofits in the space for years and hundreds of thousands of different campaigns. So obviously there's a lot of different bells and whistles and features, and they're not always right in front of you because there's so many options. It's just impossible. So if you ever are looking to do something, never hesitate to reach out. Someone else has probably done it before, and it might already be cooked into the tool, and you might not even be aware of it. But hopefully through webinars like this, it helps raise awareness of what is possible. All right, so those are all great examples. Now we're going to go in and I think there was a couple more tips you had here, Karen, so let me go here to the next slide.
Yeah, just, what I've always learned is there's just always more to learn. Obviously TeamRaiser/Convio has been around for so many years, and so there's all these little things that are built into things. And when I'm even on the Luminate community, I see one of Cathexis employees writing blog posts from 2000 whatever. It's like, hey, Dan. But there's just always more to learn. Never just say no because you don't think you can do it. I'm always investigating. Can we do this? Can we not do this? If I can't figure it out through knowledge base or support, I give Cathexis a call. I definitely, you need people to call. You need people to bounce ideas off of, whether that's somebody like Cathexis, Blackbot. I talk to my rep every other week or so. I even reach out to my old rep every so often. I definitely go to BBCon. I call support. I go to the community. There's so much to learn, and there's tips out there. And usually when you're trying to figure something out, it's usually just a phone call away.
Yeah, great points. There's another question in here. Is the value of the T-shirt backed out for the donor in your autoresponders? Do you put a value to that and take that out of the donation receipt?
No, we do not.
But you could if you chose to, I believe, right? You can put a value to
right.
the item that you give away, and that can be done. It's all settings that you can apply and have that. But Roswell isn't doing that based on how they have their setup.
No.
Yep.
Right, like there is like our ticketed events or things like that, we would, like if but not for the T-shirt.
Great stuff, and definitely highly recommend BBCon this year. It's going to be right in my backyard. Cathexis Partners, we're a virtual company, so fancy way of saying we all work from home. I moved from the Chicagoland area down to Central Florida about 7 years ago, and this year BBCon is going to be in Orlando at the Gaylord here, just a few miles away. So definitely a good year to make BBCon if you haven't been able to make it before. Any other questions, feel free to type those into the chat. And then in a moment here, I'll try on muting everybody, and I'll give you a warning before I do that. But there was another question here in the chat. Does requiring a registration fee decrease additional fundraising? How much is your required donation? You can set that, but if specifically, Karen, how do you guys set that? Does the registration fee go against your fundraising total or not?
No, it depends upon the event. Again, we have 10 different team raisers, so not all of them have registration fees, and then some of them, for example, for the ride, it's a $20 straight registration fee that does not go towards their fundraising minimum. However, then we have an endurance ride that has a $3,500 fundraising minimum, and if their registration fee of $100 does go towards their minimum. So it is definitely a case-by-case basis, depending upon the type of team raiser. Our ride not only has a $20 registration fee, but a $200 minimum for our basic routes. And not everybody makes that $200, but at the same time, we do have over 7,000 riders that do that and more. So, you have to let people know that registration fees cover the expenses, and for some of these big events, you need to have those registration fees. Our Balls event, our DIY events, do not have a registration fee. So again, there's the differences. So it's hard to answer that exactly. So
yeah, but either configuration is possible. And then there was a request to show the screenshot again of where the news feed shows to the participant. Am I on the right slide?
Yes, I'm not sure if that's like the message thing. That's kind of what they would see within their participant center. That's not a screenshot exactly of their participant center, but right. That's what they kind of see with it. It's pretty much on their homepage of their participant center, above their.
Isn't it right above their fundraising goal on the left, on the right hand side, or am I making that up?
It's right above their goal. Right about, below their tabs. I'd have to log in to see exactly.
Got it. So right in the main content area. Yeah. So once you set it up, you'll see it in a test TeamRaiser. Then there was another question, do you use the delayed self-pledge for your participants, and what are your thoughts on that? Have you guys played with that yet, Karen?
We do not do the delayed self-pledge. We do not. I think they tried that a long time ago before I was here, and like just with other systems, and it's just kind of too much work to some extent.
There's a lot to it, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with delayed self-pledge. In fact, worked with the group that initially built it out and worked on the specs for when they built it out for TeamRaiser for a client that moved from Sphere to TeamRaiser, like Karen and herself, that journey. And there's some pros and cons and some nuances to it. It's very handy. For those of you that don't know, delayed self-pledge is an option that you can have enabled where it's basically like a credit card guarantee for a car rental or a hotel room, where you can, if you have a minimum fundraising goal that people have to reach, say it's $1,000, they would basically charge a nominal fee to get a token to hold on to that credit card information with the merchant services, not locally yet. It's all compliant. And then you can choose to charge whatever the difference is. Say someone individually raised $750 of the $1,000, they would be charged the difference, the delta, the $250 at whatever point you agreed with them that you're going to charge it. Say it's the day of the event or 30 days after the event, and that can all be set up. There's some nuances to it, some pros and cons, when that transaction happens, what's the best timing, all of that. And they've come out with some new features in the last couple of years, so some details in that to unpack and consider before implementing it, but works great for the folks that it's a good fit for. Let's see, where do you activate the events news feed? I think that was right here. What step was that in, Karen?
That's actually like if you're at Illuminate and then you go to TeamRaiser, it's not within your actual TeamRaiser event. It's a separate tab just called Newsfeed, and then
if you have problems locating it, we can get you there. How do you have a
participant centers? Yeah.
Yeah, it's right next. Yeah. When you first go to the list, how do you have a required fundraising minimum without using delayed self-pledge? You can set up a required fundraising minimum, and so when someone registers, you can set up there's the default suggested fundraising goal. And then there's the minimum, and you can choose it. So if someone tries to set it down, if it's $1,000 you set as the minimum fundraising goal, and someone tries to change it to $750, they'll get an error message saying that the minimum fundraising goal is $1,000.
Right, and what basically at Ride Day you have to raise $200 before you can ride, and so when they come to check in, they basically, if they've already raised $200, their envelope will say that. If not, we have volunteers who can look them up to see if they've raised that online, or they can finish their payment that day. So they don't get their bib, if you want to call that, to ride until they've proven that they've raised that money. Same thing with our other events that might have that, like our endurance ride, or they have a swim that you have to raise $100. It's just basically at check-in, that's when we say it. And if they can't do it that day, then we'll take a commitment form and invoice them later, that kind of thing. So
I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody. This is just fair warning that you're now going to be unmuted unless you've muted yourself on your end, and feel free to ask questions. This could derail quickly if there's a lot of background noise, and we'll just bring it to an end. So before I do unmute, I want to say thank you very much, Karen, for your time and your expertise and your experience and all these examples. I trust they were, obviously based on the questions, very helpful for folks, and really appreciate you as a client and taking your time to share your knowledge.
Oh, no problem, and thanks for all your help over these years.
All right, everybody is unmuted now, so if you prefer to ask any questions, we've had a lot of great questions in the chat, but if anybody wants to ask a question live, go for it.
And go.
All right, I'm not hearing any questions, so I do want to, again, thank everybody for attending, and thank you very much, Karen, for your time today. And we will be sharing out the recording after the fact. So if you weren't able to attend, well, you wouldn't be hearing this now, but we'll be sending these out in case you want to share with anybody after the fact as well. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Got like 3 good things out of it. Yeah. Okay, we need to try to eliminate this.